Welcome back, everyone. It was a Star Wars heavy weekend this past weekend as we're gearing up for the planetary qualifiers. We had not only the previous event that I talked about at the Bearded Dragon, but also a showdown at the Holmes site for alternate universes. And we're going to talk about the top 4 lists from that particular event. So once again, we split in this particular event in the top cut. Everybody kind of wanted to go home. It was a long day. And it was only a top 4 cut because we had 12 players. So spoiler alert on that. We did do a weird split to keep everything even in the top 4, but there were some interesting lists. And the first one I'm going to start out with is Boba Yellow, which is something that is, well, I'll be honest, there's a variety of Rey lists that are on the rise. And there are some unique aspects of this particular list that I don't think are really present in many of the ones that I've been seeing. So shout out to this particular player for, well, topping with this. And I know they had mentioned that they've been slugging away with this particular deck for a while now, so congratulations. Now, we are starting out with a significant amount of 1-drops, interestingly enough, favoring Chopper over R2, which seems a little odd, but you may see why as we get through the list. Restored Arcs, no surprise there, nor are Surprise Strikes, Spark of Rebellions, the Leias. There's a lot of things that are fairly normal in this list until you get towards the top end. Now, I do want to call out something towards the middle, and that is the double Jedi lightsaber, as well as the bamboozle. I imagine these are concessions to aggro. Now, I've always been of the opinion that you play Rey because your matchup into aggro is better, and I wonder if you need the double lightsaber. So let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on that one, or if the pilot happens to want to give some feedback, let me know. Now, moving from there, again, fairly standard stuff. We are seeing 2 Fleet Lieutenants. There's a ton of 2-ofs in this list, so I'm not sure if it was indecision or if there's a pattern with, well, I have X number of pumps, I have Y amount of removal or / bounce, and I'm just hitting specific targets. But notably, there's no takedowns until we get to the board. There's not a lot of other things that you would kind of expect to show up, given that, well, Rey is blue. Hitting at least the 4-drops, Kanan is obvious, but double the forces with me, and this card has been staging an incredible comeback, at least in the games that I've seen. A lot of people are featuring this, and I think it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise. To be honest, it's very difficult to play around this. It's just, yeah, they play it, they buff their dude, they either crush you for a bunch of damage, murder someone on your team, or do all of the above and also get a shield. So it's a tough spot to be in. Now, the 5-drop is very interesting. I don't remember the last time I saw Vigilant Honor Guard. I guess it's a 4/6 that comes out a turn earlier than Obi-Wan. I'm not in love with this guy, but I have seen it popping up occasionally, so I would love to hear where this felt like it was necessary. Again, I feel as though Rey should be favored into aggro, but maybe you need those extra Sentinels, and admittedly, it's a Sentinel only once, realistically, but it is a Sentinel, it is sizable, but not quite sizable enough to dodge cunning, so again, love to hear thoughts on that one. Only 2 Obi-Wan, actually going 2 and 2 between the Honor Guard and Obi-Wan, not favoring either. So that's very interesting. Here's probably the thing that people are going to jump out the most at, and that is the Ghost. Now, there are a number of Spectre units. Remember, we talked about Chopper. You got Chopper, you got Ezra, you got the Ghost. And, oh, also, by the way, Kanan, which I don't know how I forget. Like, that's the most important Spectre guy, at least as far as the card game goes. I know nothing about the lore on that end. So giving shields to other Spectres, pretty cool, and there's a lot of things that you could potentially threaten with that and definitely throw off your opponent's combat math. Is it a trick that you're going to catch them with more than once? Maybe? I'm not sure, but a lot of the bodies in Rey end up being fairly resilient thanks to the stacking +1/+1 counters, and eventually you may just push things to a range where they're going to stick around. The Ghost comes down, it's a large ship, it's shielded itself, and now it's shielding your ground units. I can kind of get it. Full set of Luke and full set of Han, absolutely expected out of this. I don't know why you would go to lower numbers, but I guess maybe there's some scenario. Now, in the board, we get the extra copies of Bamboozle, as I mentioned earlier. This is probably to help deal with potential Darksaber plays. The Leia's also a layer on top of that. You do have other options. You know, you could, of course, lightsaber up Thing, whatever it happens to be, and then run that into Sabine on the appropriate turn, but this gives you extra outs. It's outs out of hand, and it's outs that your opponent can't really do much about. Now, since it returns the upgrade to hand, they can, of course, replay it, but the whole point is that they get a big tempo boost, and now it's tempo negative because you didn't even have to spend any resources on it, hypothetically. Additionally, you do get the singleton takedown, which we didn't see in the main deck. Fell the dragons and Rivals Fall clearly for control matchups, other big nasties. Redemption is the capital ship for hero side, at least up to this point, and we've seen it in a variety of matchups, to be honest. It can, of course, help stabilize against aggro, although you don't love it there because sometimes they can just push through anyway. It really depends on the board state, but you got to work with what you got. It is, if nothing else, a big-ass ship. It's a 6/9, if nothing else. Nice. Survivor's Guilt. This is something that is also very interesting. It comes down on 5 resources as a 4/6. I don't know where this one really fits, to be honest. It's obviously intended to be like the confiscate slot, I think. Maybe not obviously. I am, after all, just guessing. So I don't know if that's coming down too late. Like, that's after Sabine has hypothetically swung twice. Odds are it only swung once, but bossk? Question mark? I'm not sure. But this is a pretty cool list. If you're looking for other inspiration for Rey, definitely check this one out. Next up, we got a little bit of glare. I am, of course, using the the pictures that are images taken by the AU staff rather than putting everything into SWDB just to get it up quickly. If you want the deck list, just pause the video. I'm trying to do it as fast as I can because it was delayed on getting the actual deck lists themselves. So this is Blue Bossk, and I did play this player in round 4, I believe, on stream. And this is what I think you'd expect as Blue Bossk, notably running double Snoke, which I think a lot of people have started to shy away from, or maybe started out that way and maybe are coming back to. Interestingly enough, only a singleton pillage. We talked about that the last time we were looking at Blue Bossk lists, and this particular one, shaving a few, moving them into the sideboard. Most of the main deck is kind of what you'd expect. It's almost, well, maybe not exclusively blue, but there is an enormous amount of blue to enable those Childsons. Main deck Pershings, and that one has also been on the rise. I have been debating my resourcing decisions with a number of decks because normally I say, hey, I don't really want to force choke against control. You might have to force choke the Pershing and give them 2 cards to make sure they don't draw 4 or more, depending on what they do. I don't know how they would do that in this deck, but you get the idea. One other spicy tech in the main. If you don't recognize that card in the 4th column there, that is Imprisoned. It is an upgrade, and speaking with this player at the event, and I saw other people running it both that day as well as in the Bearded Dragon event, Imprisoned is a way to try and fight Relentless. It's an upgrade, so it doesn't get turned off. It also comes down pretty cheap. I don't know if I like it more or less than the idea of just, hey, smuggle a Covert Strength or play a random 1-cost upgrade, or event or whatever, but it is an option, and it is something that you can play through Relentless, maybe even onto something else if you absolutely have to. Notably also, singleton restock in the main to supplement the Vigilance. Moving into the board, we do see the additional restock, as well as the inclusion of Bazines and Bounty Hunter's Crew. We've talked about this before, of course, for the slower matchups where it's grindy and it turns into restock wars. And as I mentioned on many occasions, until FFG changes the draw rules, the control matchups are not boiling down to restock wars, I don't think I want any part of it. So credit where credit is due for these players being able to suffer through that. Supplementing the control tools, or anti-control tools really is the better way to put it, are pillages. The extra copy of Make an Opening and Open Fire are in the board. Personally, I don't know. I feel as though one of the only weaknesses for this deck and this sort of deck is Lurking TIE Phantom. Now, you do have Entrenched already in the main, but I want to make sure I have the best chance to draw stuff, so I would probably put all of those main, but that's just me. But either way, this worked out very well for them, and they were crushing it throughout the day. Next up, we have another blue deck. It's the sea of blue lately. For all the ranting and whining I have personally done about Sabine, nobody's playing it. I don't know what that says for this weekend. I'm concerned about my own meta calls. We'll have to see how this goes. Now, unfortunately, I am a little unclear as to what's the board here. I'm pretty sure it's all the cards on the left, not on the playmat. We're going to go with that. So operating under that assumption, because that seems completely reasonable based on what I'm seeing. This looks like a fairly standard Pawn 2 blue list. We do notably have some spice, as there always is in all of these decks. There's always, everybody has their own slight tweaks and unique takes on this. Only singleton copy of Village Protectors, the Village People. That card has been very, very powerful in a variety of matchups. I know it shows up more commonly in Ray, which now that I say that, yeah, it wasn't showing up in the previous Ray list, so maybe I'm completely off base and people are completely off Village People there, but I'm a little surprised to only see one split between these two decks. But either way, Village People here, I know it's a little worse in Han and better in Ray, but whatever, you get the idea. We do have only 2 copies of Concord Dawn Interceptors, which I didn't realize at the time, because I had also played this player. And that also surprises me a bit, because I feel that this deck and many decks are kind of soft in space, and it leaves an opening for those space decks space-based aggro decks to kind of go ham. And in this particular case, I guess it was good enough to get them a top 4 berth, so there is that. The spice I was referencing earlier are the singleton copies of Entrenched, which is cool, as well as Mace Windu. I would love to know how they got to the Entrenched, because this is a deck that kind of wants to fight for the board. I actually almost feel as though this is entrenching your own guys, so that way you can help control the board. It obviously answers Lurking TIE Phantoms and other things like that, but if you give your opponent this big beat stick, they can just smash your stuff. Now, it buys you time until you're ready, but this is a very unit-based deck as compared to if you entrench something at a bossk, it's like, whatever, that thing's just going to sit there until I Super Laser Blast. That doesn't exist here. Unless you want a Rival's Fall, the thing you entrenched, which feels terrible. Now, we do have 2 copies of Pillage, full set of Force Throws. There's your discard package on top of the full set of Pose, which I know a lot of people are shaving. Only 2 Obi-Wans, which is pretty interesting. Again, kind of soft to cunning. It happens. Singleton Tech, the other ones in the board, we'll get to that momentarily. We also have full set of Redemptions, as well as Chewie, as well as Crate Dragons on top of the Lukes and Mace Windu. That is a lot of top end that if you can get there, which this deck certainly has the tools to do so, will absolutely start dropping the hammer turn after turn after turn after turn. And by the way, that hammer comes down a little bit cheaper because Han. So definitely really cool. Fell the Dragon and Takedown, I'll point out, also as part of the removal suite. So gives you a little bit of a spread against a variety of things. Now moving into the board, extra Chewie, extra Fells, extra Pillage, disabling Fang Fighters, the other Village Protectors, Tech, and Mystic Reflection, which is a card that I know got boarded in. I think we talked about it after we played, that it was kind of an anti-Lurking TIE Phantom, as well as other things, tool. I mean, it can snipe a lot of things, and it's a pretty cool trick that you don't see very often, and I think it definitely should show up more often. How much more often, I guess, is up for debate. But I'd love to hear if people are doing well with that in this list or other ones, because it is something that I think was lurking on the periphery for a while and then kind of fell off the face of the earth. But again, congratulations. Last but not least is this jerk. This is, well, me. And the glare is horrendous. So I'm just going to tell you, this is a very standard Boba list. The 2 things that are glared out horrendously, and also, by the way, everybody else is way more organized in their layout for the deck. Mine was not. So I'm on 30 health base, Jabba's Palace with Boba. Mercenary Gunship and Crafty Smuggler are the full play sets up there. I love Boba. I love Mono Yellow Boba, but I haven't been feeling it in set 2, and I've been playing a ton of other stuff. I've had a lot of success with Bossk. I came back to this one because I wanted to test it out in some live events against real people, like actual competitors, and see if I was willing to take it to the PQ. Spoiler alert, I'm not. Even though this was my EXO list, and as I said, I played 2 of the other people in the top 4 in the Swiss to get here. Now, the pumps are fairly standard. The unit layout is fairly standard, except for this. There's only a singleton Boba unit, and I wanted to put in the extra lurking tie. I was trying it with only 2 in the main. The right-hand side of the board with the Gamorrean guards, lurking tie, the extra Bodhies, Boba's armor, and a new adventure is the side. The new adventures came in a lot, as you'd imagine, against the blue decks, tons of entrench, other stuff like that. I did manage to pull off a new adventure onto a fire spray in order to close the game out, so that was pretty cool. The rest of it, the unique things, I think, or most unique things, are the Boba unit number, which Boba unit lost a lot of value once the rules got changed. I would love to have the extra lurking tie in there. I didn't get a ton of Toro resets, so I kind of feel as though you want maybe a few more bounty hunters, maybe, and maybe that justifies the Boba going back in. Boba's armor was exceptionally weak on the day. It's weird because there are tons of matchups where I'm like, I don't think they could ever answer Boba's armor. And then I just don't really have a good window to play it. Or by the time I have a window, it's like, well, they could have rivals fall and it would be a blowout based on whatever happens. So I don't know. I'm torn on that one at the moment. Other than that, fairly standard list. It performed pretty well this day and then performed very poorly the next one. So that's it. That's the top 4 from this particular showdown. I'd love to hear what other people are doing at their showdowns, how they're doing at their showdowns, as we're closing in both on PQs and pretty soon, like a little over a month, we're going to be getting set 3, and then we're going to be starting this all over again, trying to figure everything out. But that's going to do it for this time. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And tune in next time for more Random Thoughts.